Don't press the mute button.
This is like the eject button in the Bond car right here.
Crisis averted.
Perfect.
Ready?
Yes.
Welcome to Legacy Conversations, recorded right here at the barn on Collimer Road. I'm your host, Mark Modulewski. Our mission, to educate, inspire, and entertain. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. Billy Basher, welcome to Legacy Conversations, buddy. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah,
This is fun.
Yeah, you think.
Already.
Right? It hasn't even started and it's fun.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in. You and I have known each other for, I was thinking about it on the way in, a long time. When did we first meet?
2010, 2011.
Yeah, something like that. 15 years, you know?
I don't want to think about it, but you're right.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, a long time.
It's been a long time.
A lifetime.
You grew up in the area?
Correct.
Where did you grow up?
Hamilton.
Hamilton, New York.
Yeah.
Tell me about growing up in Hamilton, New York.
Hamilton, small town. It's a land of milk and honey. It's a land of no consequences. It's a college town. It's fun to grow up in, but one of those places.
Small town USA.
Small town, and eventually you want to grow up and move away, and then you always end up finding yourself back there. That's the best way to describe a town like Hamilton. Yeah,
it's a cool little town, and the college that's there is what?
Colgate.
Colgate University.
Yeah.
Most people have heard of it. It's a fantastic institution.
Mm-hmm.
So you grew up in Hamilton. You've got a couple of children who are how old now?
22 and 19.
22 and 19. Are they local?
No, they're both off at school.
Yep.
Enjoying their undergrad and doing well and all that fun stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
So tell me about, how did you get here? What did the last 25, 30 years of your life look like?
So the last 25, 30 years is, a little bit of a move. I moved down to D.C. about 20, 25 years ago and went down there and tried to launch my insurance career down there and, got married, had my daughters and then moved back, like I said, to the land of milk and honey.
Yes.
20 enough years ago.
Yeah.
Got them back to Hamilton where it's fun to have them grow up in a small town and do their thing and enjoy things. And that's, other than that, it's change of career in between. And somehow in that change, I bumped into you via Keith. Yeah. And, here I am.
Here you are.
Yeah.
So you started 25 years ago in insurance. What role were you playing there?
So I was, I did a claims adjuster.
Okay.
I did that for 4 or 5 years, and then, management audit, and moved around within the claims industry. Mm-hmm. And then I was lucky enough in 2009 to be right in that sweet spot for management at a corporate company to be let go.
Get downsized after the 2008 debacle.
Yeah, they thinned the herd, so to speak, and it stung. And that's about the time I came into meeting you and of course Keith.
Yeah.
And gosh, it's a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how when you look back, things
really
happen
is
for a reason.
Yep.
So you've been in insurance for basically your entire career.
Correct.
And the type of insurance that you're in is what? Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So P&C, property and casualty. I have, my focus is habitational, commercial lesser's risk, some contractors. And that's been my focus for the last 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. And before that was more focused on some of the smaller businesses and contractors and stuff like that. But trending in a really good direction with the larger commercial lesser's risk and multifamily habitational apartment buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because I think when most people think that, you do insurance, you're an insurance professional, people would think, oh, he sells insurance to cover your car, right? Or cover your house. And certainly you do that, right? Like you're the agency that you work with, Tanner Insurance Agency, does that. Not a big deal.
Right.
But there's so many facets to insurance. I mean, I have an insurance license, but I don't sell property and casualty insurance, right? I sell life insurance and disability insurance and group insurance and some of those, health insurance, how it affects our individual clients and then how it affects the businesses, right?
Yeah.
But for you, in your world, when you say I'm an insurance person, especially now, you're working, not that you can't work with families, but you're working with companies, you're working with people who have multiple properties per se, and business owners, and you're trying to help them identify what coverages they have, what coverages they need, and then trying to get it for something that would fit their budget, and trying to put it with a company that would work well with them, right? Because not all insurance is created equal, is it?
No, it's not, and it's about fit.
Fit.
Yeah, it's about fit, and you know, today's days it's price driven, but fit, and if you marry it with the right customer service, it's an easier fit.
Yeah.
Is the best way to put it.
Yeah, we're going to unpack that here in a second, the customer service piece.
Yeah.
So when you go in from on a day-to-day basis, your focus is to attract and retain and service commercial clients, right? Look for those folks that are out there. And tell me what you do. If I was somebody who owned a bunch of homes, or if I owned commercial property and it had 6 or 8 different, I had different tenants, for example, what do you do? How do you help me?
Well, it's well, first, after we make the connection and get a chance to sit down and talk about what their concerns are, and what they have going on, and then of course share what their experience has been with prior coverage, and whether or not they're comfortable or whether or not they're knowledgeable about their coverages. That's kind of the first step, to make sure they understand what they have or don't have.
Yeah.
And then spend the time, understanding, after they have a chance to digest what they have or don't have, and then talk about, well, what do you want?
Right.
And price aside, we talk about the coverages, and then at the end of the day, I go out and I do some underwriting out in the field, and find the right fit from a carrier perspective.
Sure.
And then come back to them with the different options that they would have. And then if that sounds like that works, then we create a customer service plan that's very unique to them. And then, to help them at the end of the day, besides selling the insurance, is making sure that they're comfortable putting everything together and managing it. Because when you talk about people with a lot of properties and or requirements, of course, insurance certificates, binders, all that fun stuff, it can be a little overwhelming.
Sure.
And it can be a mess. It doesn't have to be. But that's where we come into the next level. So we find the fit, we talk about what they want, educate them, bring them up to speed, give them choices.
Right.
And it sounds simple. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but
that's what people need, right? They need a simple solution to it. Because it sounds to me like the first thing you're doing when you're meeting them is almost asking them, why do you have what you have? Show me what you have.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks, it's probably fair to say, they don't 100% know what they have.
Correct.
So somebody coming in, taking their time to say, let me explain what you do have.
Yep.
And there's a difference between what you have, what you need, and what you want, right? I think in insurance coverage, per se.
Sure.
Because if people's focus is, let's find the least expensive option, that's a different focus than get me the proper coverage, for what I need. God forbid something happens.
Right. Yeah. The conversation about price is an important one.
Sure.
But some people will be much more comfortable having a lot less. And again, if they understand that and what they have and they don't have, then that's a conversation you need to have long before you sign any paperwork.
Yeah.
And that's where you spend the time and empower them and make them feel comfortable, and bring them up to speed as best you can. And some folks are just like, hey, just give me the best rates.
Right.
Okay, that's great. But at the same time, I don't ever want to get that call of, hey, I didn't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, realistically, your job is to be a consultant for them to provide. When you say options, you mean multiple carriers, multiple design, or both?
Well, options, coverages, the specific coverages within your commercial policies. There are a lot of smaller, I call them bells and whistles, but some are more germane to their industry than others.
Give me an example.
Yeah, a great example, and this is kind of the newest thing in the last 5 or 10 years, is for habitational, is tenant discrimination insurance. So not all carriers offer it. And what it essentially is if you're a landlord and if you approve a lease or don't approve a lease or kick somebody out, there are laws that protect those statuses of someone that
Sure.
has tattoos, or you name it.
Yeah.
And so you want to make sure that that's a new facet to exposure in this industry, and that's something that we can offer, and surprisingly relatively inexpensive. Now that not only protects you against your potential tenant discrimination claims,
Sure.
but also it's going to protect you and your employees under employees liability insurance. And kind of in the same vein of somebody says I was hired or fired or whatever for the wrong reasons that they claim, that's an important part of your job. That's an important part of your business. In the past, people used to think about their commercial insurance as, hey, it catches on fire or someone trips on my sidewalk.
Right.
It's not as simple as that anymore.
No.
Although that is the biggest exposure, I think, for a lot of these properties, but there's a lot of smaller bits and pieces that, we're tuned into pretty good.
So realistically, there are coverages that were required or mandated by law or by the financial institution that you partner with. Nicest way of saying, right? Like New York State says, if you own this property, here's the minimum coverage you have to have. If a bank has loaned you money on it, they may say, hey, here's the minimum that you need to have, right? Because we own it with you, or we own it and you're paying us back.
Yeah.
And then some of the value you bring is under this whole idea of, let me express to you some of these other things that may happen. Because what you had said to me, which I think I've heard from other insurance folks, is nobody wants to get the call that something happened and we don't have coverage for it, or we don't have coverage that's sufficient to cover the need.
Right. Yeah. And again, the cost is going to drive their comfort zone for what they want to spend their money on is going to drive that decision up front. But, hey, this is your options. This is what I've seen from my experience. It doesn't mean that you're not going to see a $10 million claim down the road. But, again, you empower them and let them know what there is out there and what is not. And if they're comfortable with it, that's what you work with.
Yeah.
So, and that's what develops the relationship.
Yeah. So with all of these so you have a whole bunch of men and women like you who go out there and are trying to work to solve these problems for people. And part of it is this technical aspect, right? Like you're an insurance professional, you understand types of coverages, you understand the types of losses, more than the average person. I mean, that's the idea of being a professional at doing it. And then you have access to company or companies that have different products that can kind of suit those needs. And then some of it is kind of like this emotional connection, right? Like the differentiation between company A and company C who want to be competitive in that market, is it really that far apart?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So if I went to XYZ insurance company, right, and I say, I need some minimum coverage insurance for this property that I have that has 10 units.
Yeah.
And then I go to 3 other companies who are in theory in that market, right? Is the difference from baseline coverage, is that really that far apart, or are they pretty close?
Yeah. Yes. There is a big difference when it comes to just the minimum insurance. I think I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, there are opportunities where they can get the minimum and get away with it.
Yep.
And be one of those people that don't have to report to a financial institution, and they can say, yeah, I just want one less zero on that check.
Yeah.
That I'm writing off to you guys because this is just an expense to me that I have to keep.
Right.
To keep myself vaguely comfortable, very minimal comfort.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
because I think what ends up happening is that, like for me, right? So we own this property and I own a house and I have a little company, and part of you thinks, well, I can get this insurance from anybody and they're all about the same price.
Yeah.
Now, when you start adding on the bells and whistles, it may change, right? Because I'm adding coverages that may be germane to what I'm doing.
Right.
But what you're saying is, just because you're with a company that you've been with forever and they tell you that it's a good rate, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a good rate for the coverages you have.
Yeah. Again, and that's why the, having that discussion and taking the time to explain to them what they have or don't have is very important.
Yeah.
And people can be blissfully unaware of, when they write the check, I'm good.
Yeah.
And as opposed to, well, I just had this conversation with Bill when we did our last review, and yeah, maybe not, or yeah. So that's where the comfort level comes in. That's where there's meaning behind, working with us. And or when you pay the premium, you don't get the instant gratification of getting something back.
Yeah,
it's kind of internal, right? So the folks that sit there and pay for their insurance, they want to feel it. They want to know this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's where the relationship and spending the time with them and making sure they're comfortable with all the paperwork that they have is important.
So if I'm in that space, one of these individuals who has those types of properties, how often should I review or shop my coverage?
So review without a doubt, every year. And obviously at any time when I won't touch the button.
Don't touch the button. You can always push it this way.
Is that amazing? Look at that.
Look at that.
It articulates so many different ways. So yeah, once a year, and anytime if they are doing a remodel, or obviously if the exposure changes, there's some insurance jargon for you.
Right.
And then when it comes to shopping it, the discussion I have with every one of my clients is right now the market's tight, as it is for many.
Explain that. What does tight mean?
Very few carriers are within, especially in my market, commercial lessors risk and habitational. A lot of carriers have pulled out because of the economy and everything else going on. So when they pull out, obviously the rates are going to be they're going to be driven up.
It's capitalism at its finest, right? If there's more options,
yeah,
then the prices go down. If there's less options than those people, the prices go up.
Yeah. So so shopping it around is something, certainly we can still do. There's just a lot less options.
Right.
And what happens too on the other side is when carriers realize that they're one of the few players in the market, their underwriting just tightens right up. Super tight. And because at the end of the day, they got to protect their
interest. The good and the bad risks.
Yeah. And so again, that's when folks get a little frustrated, and so do I, and I get it.
Sure.
They're like, gosh, I got cracked windows in this apartment and they're giving me a hard time about stuff like this. And you're like, well, when you don't have an option to go elsewhere, we kind of have to work with this. But a couple of years down the road, the economy changes and players come back into the game and start throwing their weight around. And
sure.
then we have a lot more latitude. So that's kind of the flip side that's my worry, is making sure that they understand, or they don't have to understand, that I put them with a company that's going to be a good fit. When their underwriting is that tight and they're getting a good rate, you got to go for the places that are going to fit them really well. Otherwise, they'll non-renew, or they'll say no thank you, or they won't give you the best rate. So that's a challenge that is really for me to find those right clients and that fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. Like when I first started in the business, and let's say we were doing life insurance, there was 24 carriers. Some carriers I didn't even know in the state of New York to get it. And now it's less. And in your world, to buy auto insurance, maybe there's 15 or 20 different companies you can buy auto insurance in the state of New York, whatever the number is.
Yeah.
But in your work, maybe there's a half a dozen of those folks who are competitive or in there.
Yeah.
So when somebody says, well, go shop the market, it's like, okay, but there's only 3 or 4 people with your type of establishment that want to underwrite you and are going to be competitive. So you really want to make sure you find the right place.
Yeah. That has really been the difference for me. And maybe Keith shared that with you in the last few years, is that once I got into this market, I understood certain companies are very tight on their underwriting and will give you a great rate if you have X, Y, and Z. So it's my job to kind of go through that and, scrub my list of my potential clients and say, these are the ones I know I can really help. Not to say I can help everyone or try to help everyone.
Sure.
But I know my success rate with certain risk, and that's where it makes my job more lucrative and easier.
Right. Because you both win, right? That there's people that you can talk to and say, I really think I can help you. And in turn, you both win.
Yeah.
So we keep talking about this guy, Keith, and it's like the last person in the world that I want to talk about. But so
have you had him on yet?
No, he hasn't been on the show, and I don't know, maybe one day we'll see if he asks.
You got to really nail him down.
I know.
You think you can get him on the show.
It's hard. So, so, oh my gosh, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I met Keith,
Yep.
and very different than what he is today, right? But he and his wife Diane and his father-in-law Bruce had a small insurance agency, and
Yep.
it's grown significantly under their leadership. It's been amazing.
Yep.
And it's an insurance agency called Tanner Insurance Agency, and that's an agency that you work with and work for, and you have your practice underneath there. Tell me a little bit about the company and the agency.
Yeah. So, first, I'm just going to say this. I worked for corporate America for a good 15, 20 years before I got into the good side of the insurance agency,
Yeah.
insurance industry. And, it's great.
Yeah.
And, not to say anything bad about the poor slobs that are, grinding away in the corporate world. There's a place for it and there's a time for it. But what I'm going to say is when you work for a small family run company, that, gives a darn
Right.
and, does it right.
Yes.
And they don't, there's not a lot of unnecessary rules and meetings.
Right.
Unnecessary rules and meetings are synonymous with corporate America. Sorry, I said that.
Yeah, just a little bit. You mentioned that.
I'm sorry, but that's the beauty of working for a family, a small family-run business like Tanner Insurance Agency. They're great people.
Yeah,
and
it's
they
a
allow
relationship business, right?
It's a relationship business, and Keith, allows you to grow, and Keith and Diane and Josh allow you to grow and do your thing and figure it out for yourself, which is, my personality that fit me the best. But I'm just going to say that is highly valued. There's more value to that than what people recognize when you start talking about building relationships and building a book of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
When they let you give you the reins to do something like this and trust you, you have to earn that trust.
Yeah.
It works out really well.
Yeah.
And so I'm very fortunate to be a part of that.
Well, and I think that leads us into this next section. So, you want to partner with an agency that gives you the freedom to grow, but gives you the support to make sure that you can do your job the best you can.
Yeah.
And there's something for working for a massive organization, and there's something about working for a small midline organization, right? And the idea is what you talked about, is this personal touch and this personal service, and everything's just not necessarily black and white. But what that also does is it allows you guys to creatively design your service, right?
Yeah.
So in this business, especially in your business, it's focused on price. A lot of, if you come in and say, hey, I'm an insurance guy and your price is going to go up, it's a lot harder to get a meeting with somebody rather than the opposite. But the agency provides you with the support so that you can design a service platform for those clients and potential clients.
Yep.
So tell me about that service platform.
Yeah. So one of the things that that Keith and Diane, that they've allowed me to have the latitude in doing is creating a unique service platform for my commercial clients that have a lot going on.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's about, having a shared database and customizing it to their needs. Because all too often, ask any business owner, they'll get a piece of paper in the mail and from that relates to their insurance, and they'll call, which is fine, or they'll say, okay, I'm going to drop it into this database and I don't have to call and then fax or mail or anything. It's in a shared database. So it just streamlines that whole Q&A process. And it's a lot easier for them as well. Something comes up down the road, they can take a look at those documents within that shared database that we're also helping them manage. The biggest thing in our industry is certificates of insurance and binders and deck pages and invoices and stuff like that. And when they have one database, and that's going to be on the same page as what.
So regardless of carrier and where you are, if Bill's not there, and you do everything you can to be available for your clients. But if I was your client and they say, I need a certificate for X, Y, and Z, they can call the office, they can talk to one of the team members, and then they can go in there and they can see their stuff. It doesn't matter where they are.
Precisely. So, of course, anytime there's a new change to be done on the policy, a call is appropriate. But once it's done, we'll send it off to whomever the interests are and then put it in the database. But all too often in the middle of the policy term, that entity will say, gee, we didn't get it.
Sure.
And so they'll know it's there. and they'll say, oh my gosh, well, simple enough. 2 clicks, 3 clicks, it's here, email gone. And certainly call us to do so. But as a business owner, you want to know what's going on. And sometimes it's easier to do that as opposed to calling and leaving a message and, all that stuff like that. So that is really where I saw the frustration in working with, the admins that help support these larger businesses as they try to fumble through invoices, binders, certificates, and getting all those things put together. They know because I help create the spreadsheet or database for them, customize it, and then they know they have ownership and they have edit ability and they can put it how they want. So they're comfortable. And they go in there, oh, boom, there it is, no problem.
Right.
So that saves, believe it or not, it sounds, again, I'm oversimplifying this, but that saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no doubt.
Yep.
I mean, because obviously, I've bought insurance for commercial properties, bought insurance for home and auto, and I don't want to ever talk to my insurance agent unless I need to. And then when I do,
what's wrong with that?
We know exactly what's wrong with that, right? And then when I do, I want it to be a simple process, right?
Yeah.
Because it's either whether you're buying a new property or you're having a claim or you need some cert, for something to prove to somebody that you can do it. I don't want that to be the hardest process.
Yeah.
A friend of mine said a long time ago, he said, I pay my insurance premiums once a year. And the reason is because I only want to feel sick once a year. I don't want to pay him every month. I don't want to pay him every quarter. I want to pay him once a year. I feel sick about it for a little while, then I don't have to worry about it to the next time.
With it.
And just be done with it, right? And nobody really cares or likes insurance until they absolutely need it, and then they're super glad they have it. Right?
Yeah. It's I like to feel the love, but at the same time, I realize that, then when they call me and I have some clients, great clients that will, within the first few minutes of a conversation, I'm trying to help them. I hate insurance. I said, fair
enough.
Fair. And I said, if I'm not explaining it in a way that helps you, please tell me. I'll try to explain it in a different way. But, obviously everyone's rates are going up. And I don't like those conversations, but you have to have those conversations. Right. And they don't feel good about it. Don't expect anyone to feel good about it. But at the same time, they've got to see the value. And that's where you really take the time to explain the coverages and what they have, what they don't have. And that helps people sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. And, the reason why rates go up, we can talk about that briefly, but insurance companies have to be profitable, right? So if they have less money coming in than they do going out, that's not a sustainable business model.
Right.
In the state of New York, if an insurance company takes in so much premium, they can't just do what they want with all of it, right? There's some requirements through the state that says some stuff has to be set on a reserve.
Yep.
And then how those reserves earn money based on how the market is doing kind of helps. So in years like 2008 and 2021, and when the World Trade Center went down, well, guess what? Their portfolios go down, which gives them less capital to deal their claims. But people don't understand that. All they want to know is, hey, I had auto insurance for 10 years and never wrecked my car. How come it went up? Or I have this building insurance and we've never put a claim in, and now you're telling me it's going higher.
Yeah. At no fault of their own.
No fault. I didn't do anything. I was the perfect person. I paid my insurance premium on time, and now you want more money.
Yeah. Then the first person, I'm the emotional punching bag for that person for a little
while. You are, which is amazing.
It's amazing. It's great.
Thank you.
So, and then, and then the rational person, and sometimes people take a little bit to cool up, but you explain to them. I said, look, this is what's going on. And sometimes I even get really deep into the weeds about explaining, like, hey, when they priced this product out, they didn't really figure out inflation going through the roof. Now they're having claims, and now these claims are worth a lot more. There's discussions to be had, and you can explain it in that way to some people, but that's the ugly truth.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So several years ago, a 2x4x8, right, a piece of lumber was a couple of bucks.
Was it $9?
And then at one point during COVID, it was like $8 or $9.
Yeah, I still can't get over that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's come back a little. It's come back a lot, but it's not all the way back. So when you have some sort of loss, the reality of it is they're reimbursing for that loss, and it costs more. Yeah. Nobody wants to, nobody wants to pay that cost, but fundamentally, all of your folks are smart enough to understand that that's just what happens. Just what it is.
Yeah. They're what it says on the policy is what they're going to get. But at the same time, that $20,000 loss a couple of years ago, well, I should say 3 years ago, right before the pandemic. Has it been that long? And now that same loss, which was $20,000 before the pandemic, is now easily $30,000, $35,000, $40,000.
Yeah.
So insurance companies, if you had that policy 3 or 4 years ago and they kept it, they didn't anticipate the cost of a $20,000 claim to be $40,000.
Right.
And now they're like, whoa, now I need to know that this risk is really good to stay on this.
Right.
Or, if you have a claim, they're like, yeah, that's the business side of it. That's the good, bad, and the ugly, which is what we do. Or it's not what we do, but that's a part of it. So,
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the process of doing a few little building projects. We've done some work here at the barn, and the cost of labor and materials goes up. Now, do I sit there and turn around and call Keith and be like, hey, buddy, good news, I need to increase my insurance because of that? Of course not, right?
Yeah.
Like no rational person says, I wonder if I could pay more for what I already have.
Sure.
But part of the responsibility of you and Tanner Insurance and the insurance professional, the professional part of this is I want to make sure you have the coverage that you need. Like you said, there's nothing worse than you do have a loss and it's a stressful time to now saying, well, my 20,000 doesn't go as far as I thought, or I thought you covered the building, but we decided to cover a dollar figure rather than the building, and that dollar figure is going to go less, right? So replacement cost versus actual cash value versus all of those types of things. The average person doesn't know the difference. They don't know what that acronym means, and that's why you're here.
Yeah, and one quick thing to hit on that to talk about rates and why they go up as well too. When you talk about these commercial buildings, which is what I do, large commercial buildings, every year the cost to rebuild that goes up
significantly,
4, 5, 6, 8, 10%. And so if you want to maintain the coverages you had before in most policies is you want to make sure that building is insured to the replacement value, getting into the insurance jargon, but it's germane to this.
But it's good for people to know.
Yeah. It's that same $20,000 loss last year is now 5-10% more. So what insurance companies do, and one of the things that I do at the renewal is to make sure that the building is still at the appropriate insurance level to maintain replacement cost terms at the time of a loss. And, if you don't touch that value, if you don't adjust that value over the years, you went from, say, a $500,000 building in 2019 is now easily an $850,000 building to replace. And if you don't change that, and if you don't adjust it for inflation, and you have that claim in 2024, you're going to be whacked with some surprises, unless I have the conversation with them as we review it and say, we should adjust this because of the replacement cost is going up.
Right.
And if you don't, here's the consequences.
Right.
And
then you're making a business decision on how you want to manage your own risk.
They make that decision. Right. And so, and again, when you see the increases in the premiums, it's partly driven by the automatic increase in value. So you're getting more coverage.
Sure.
Right. And the rate per 1,000 or per 100 or however they rate it is going to go up.
Yep.
But the increase is not always just a flat increase because we decided to jack it up.
Right.
You're getting, as opposed to $1 million of coverage under this building, you're getting 1 million, 1.1, 1.2.
Right.
So you're getting more coverages in those instances. And that's an important thing to explain to people that have a big investment, a big physical brick and mortar investment like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's pretty amazing. Like I said, we're in the process. We've done some work here. And when you look at having 2, 3, 4 men show up for a week or two to work, and then the materials that have to happen, like it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a week to get that done. So you have a commercial building, right? Let's say it's brick and it has 10 tenants in it or something, and there's a partial or a full loss. You have to clean it up. You have to get permits. You have to organize all that stuff. You have to get new people in. There's a loss of income during that time. The cost of building that stuff is more. And you don't want to get to a point where you're like, well, we have insurance, we're covered. And then you call Bill and be like, well, you do, but maybe not to get it exactly what it is. Because remember, when we said, hey, we really should up this, we decided not to.
Yeah.
And this isn't really a discussion over, hey, why you should pay more insurance. Because there's going to be some risk there because not everybody has a loss all the time.
Right.
But if you pay your premiums for 15 years as a business owner and you're paying $15,000 or whatever it is, and you're paying in several $100,000 of premium, you have one loss in a decade and you lose one of the floors to some minor fire, it's a $500,000 loss, right? So it seems like, well, I don't understand if you just look at my account, but it's everybody, right? Insurance is let's all pool our money together,
Yep.
have some folks administer it, and then hope that you don't have a loss. And if you do, we're going to take care of you.
Yeah. Let's spread the good and bad luck around.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how I like that, but yeah, I guess it is.
It's kind of true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you dive into some of these big commercial pieces, what are the things that you think get overlooked? The things that people don't think about or look at? Maybe some of the stuff that people have or they don't have. So if I sit with you and I have this commercial building, what are the things that I really need to focus on?
Well, the easy ones we talked about, the building themselves, the liability, the premises liability, your property within the building. The ones that really surprise people are the cleanup. Cleanup, and or if you have a bunch of tenants and you have to move them around afterwards. And that's, you have income protection usually in most of these policies. But if something happens and those tenants are displaced, what's your obligation to them? What does your lease say? And is your policy going to, respond accordingly?
Right.
So those are the smaller things. I mean, you just think about cleaning up a building that, let's say it's a 40-year-old building. And, what kind of chemicals were put into the construction materials 40 years ago that no one wants to touch now?
Right.
And then, building goes to the ground. You're going to get multiple agencies coming your way to say, this has got to be cleaned up.
Test for this.
You can bury this. You can't bury that. You can cart this off. That's a lot of money. And that's not built into every policy. You're going to see the building limit, and that's what people pay attention to. But one of the conversations I have, of course, is this goes to the ground. You got to scoop it up and clean it away. And there's money there, and there's premium associated with it, and you have the discussion. But you have a big building that's an older building, and if it goes to the ground, I can only imagine how many zeros are going to be after that on the check to clean it up.
Right.
Because the state's going to tell you, the county's going to tell you, the federal government's going to tell you,
can't do this. Can't do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you have a tenant who leaves the water on and it runs down a couple of different apartments and you're like, it's no big deal, we'll just clean it up. But if there's mold remediation, if you have to break out walls and people lose their kitchens for a while, like there's all of that type of stuff that you're not thinking about. You're just thinking, hey, if this thing burns down, build it back for me.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot more than that. And the vast majority of the claims that you have aren't total losses, right? They're piecemeal. I would think for every total loss, there's 100 claims for minor losses.
Yeah. And it's a good point you brought up, because the partial loss, fire protection has really changed over the years, and safety measures, and fire departments their capabilities are much better than what they've been. So they're coming in there and they're putting stuff out and not letting the building fast. And so that leaves you with, you have a partial loss and you can't really just walk away, and you can't really knock it down as much as people want to do that, but they got to put some money into it. And that's where all these other smaller costs come into play that are really important. In addition to, and one of the things you say about what's an important part is ordinance and law coverage, is you have that loss and you can rebuild. Codes is going to come in and say, this is a 20 or 30-year-old building. Well, guess what? Now it has to be ADA compliant. You got to put some money into doing this and that. Yeah. And that's not always built into your policy. That's an option. But yeah, exactly. So partial losses are huge. Partial losses are, thankfully we have the ability to save these buildings much more than we did 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Right.
So yeah. The total losses, it's a real quick story. And I've seen enough people, you get to certain fires and stuff like that, and they'll say, just please let it burn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just let it burn. And we're like, as firemen, you're like,
you can't do that.
We can't do that. We want to go play. That's not what we say. Yeah. But, they want to go put it out because they have to. But at the same time, they're like, no, let it go to the ground.
Right. But there's also a professional obligation to the insurance company and to everybody else to be like, well, if we're here to save property, then we're going to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting. And the way we build, like the way we build now, the sheetrock is different and there's fire suppression that's different, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, there's more weather, but the reality of it is, especially where we live, our building codes are pretty strong, so you're getting some wind damage, but your house isn't blowing away. We live in Kansas. It's not like my house was there, but it's not there, Bill. Like,
Yeah.
I need to get my house back, or I need to get my building back, or I had a store downstairs that was selling dresses, and then upstairs I have tenants,
Right.
and it got flooded by 9 feet of water. So now what do I do? But those are important things. So you come in, and so tell me about an average day, because you spend your time partially between servicing the clients that you have, and some of that is like an annual review. Some of it's just being in front of them as things change, so you make sure that their coverages are right. And then there's the idea of trying to continue to grow the business, which is find people that you think you can help.
Right.
And nobody necessarily, me included, even though I have an insurance license, wants to have the guy knock on his door that says, "Hi, I'm Bill, the insurance guy." And they're like, "Yes, I was waiting for you to come.
Thank God you're here.
Thank God you're here. Let's talk insurance." So tell me about your process there, because there's a fine line between being a professional insurance person and a salesperson, and neither one of those are bad terms. But sometimes we see them as these awful terms. But the reality is you're there to help people, right? That's it. So what does it look like?
First, I'm not a salesman.
No,
I hate
not.
that word.
I hate that word.
Salesperson. The day is aside from the obvious, like, hey, you come and you have some clients that need servicing now, and then there's clients that are going to need servicing, and you set up the time to meet with them and your team to make sure that they're on the same page about what they need. That's a big part of the day, and then another big part of the day is setting up the new clients and making sure that we customize those service databases and populate
delivering on the promise,
delivering on the service, and that's a lot of time. I have Dalen and Cheyenne, they're great at helping me do that, and more often than not, they'll get the call and or email along with me, and before I know it, it's done. So I'm lucky to have good people like that. So
no doubt.
So those people that help you do those things,
yes,
automatically, it's amazing. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, that just happened. It's easy. Making sure that they're on the same page and making sure that they know what the customer's expectations are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the communication inside within Tanner, or saying to them, hey, this client really needs X, Y, and Z today or tomorrow, and making sure it gets done, and following through on that.
A team that cares makes a difference.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And again, that's the beauty of a small family-run business. You're not dealing with someone in accounting on the third floor that, doesn't know what's going on. Because,
9 to 5, buddy.
9 to 5. Yeah, because they're checking out at 5, and that's it.
And we're not saying that, some of these big companies don't have people to care. That's just not true.
No,
right?
You're right. I'm sorry.
But no, you're not. But the idea of working with a company and working with people who care about the folks that they serve is super important.
Yeah.
And that's one of the differences that you and Tanner have, right? Like, you really do care about the folks that are there. You can't help every single person every single time, but you've been in the business a long time, and there's really nothing that's going to come up that we don't know, right? Because some people will say, well, it's a small company, they're not quite as good as like a big, massive mega company. And I think that's unfair. I think you could be just as good of a professional and have just as much expertise, and just as the service could be as good, and any of that stuff could be better if you have a small group of focused individuals who are really in it for the long term.
Yeah, it's also all that is true, but to differentiate us from larger companies, you're present.
Yeah.
And these clients need a face.
Yeah.
These clients need a visit. Most of them do. Not everyone does.
Right. Well, the internet's going to solve it all. No one's going to need people at all, right? Everybody's going to buy something from a computer. So.
Keep believing that. My job and my industry is safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you folks really want to believe that you can do everything on the internet, especially this line of work, and do it right.
Yeah.
Have at it. I have no fear about losing my job. I'm going to be fine.
But it's pretty interesting. It's just like the same thing with me. So many years ago, people are saying, well, if you sell insurance and you manage money, it's a commoditized thing. You can go on Google, you can type in and do it yourself. Mm-hmm. And every year our practices grow because of one thing, because there's a face. There's a face and a name.
Yeah.
So somebody can call my cell phone, they can call your cell phone. I can come see them, they can come see me. And we sit in front and say, yes, based on experience, this is what you should be doing and why. And if there is some sort of hiccup, we help you fix it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's hard to call a 1-800 number or
Mhm.
submit something on an online chat and be like, I hope the person from, I don't want to name any insurance company, but XYZ insurance company that does all the commercials, that the lady or the guy that gets back to me is having a good day and gets back to me and says, well, I'll get back to that person that's in my queue tomorrow because it's just another service claim.
Yeah, it's it's not hard to do the clicking through and doing the online servicing. It's mind numbing and frustrating. And I don't say that about every industry and every company, but more often than not, and it could be a simple accounting thing.
Yeah.
And some companies are set up really well to handle the simple stuff and they get back to, but when you have someone that, oh no, Bill, Cheyenne, Dale Ann, I call them, I know, as opposed to trying to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe a couple generations from now, people can do that better, but we haven't quite figured it out how to do all of that remotely and electronically. But for now, no,
Well,
we
the
can't.
value of human connection is important, right?
Mm.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
There are people on both sides of the population. There's people who need to live in a city to be surrounded by people all the time. There's people who want to be in the country who never see anybody, but the vast majority of the population needs human connection. They need people to
Yeah.
talk to. That's what makes them feel safe. That's what makes them feel human, right? And in a world that seems to be so focused on here's my premium, here's my policy, right? What you're trying to bring is that human factor that says, well, let me tell you why. I want you to tell me why we're doing this. I'll tell you why we're doing this and provide options.
Right.
So they can put that face with the name.
Yep. Yeah. And also too, that aside from the whole comfort part is again, picking up the phone and maybe the next day I'll see him or we can have a chat. But yeah, that is.
I know where you live if this doesn't work out. There's
Yeah.
that part too.
I've got nothing to hide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because as AI continues to go and as the search engines become smarter per se,
They're scary.
yeah,
The algorithms.
yeah,
Good.
because they're getting pretty good. So somebody can just say, well, I can just put my policy into AI, or I can just ask AI what I need. But still, are you still trusting that that's that because the AI only has the experience of the language model it has, right? It has access to. Whereas
Yeah.
Bill's got 25 years of when that happens, we call here and here's what happens, right? And there's some value to that piece.
Yeah. I'm not. AI is incredible. I'm floored by what it can do and what it picks up on me. That thing is probably listening to me right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you. There's so much squishy gray area, and I don't mean to sound like I'm wishy-washy
It's
about
a technical
insurance.
term, squishy gray.
It's squishy gray, very technical. But how AI ever figures that out, I don't know. And if they do, we're all in trouble. But yeah, I can't wrap my head around how you can do that and put it in your faith in AI when you talk about what we do.
But our
commercial insurance.
kids will probably feel a little different about it for sure.
Oh, our kids already do.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Like I said, for now,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. But go ahead and believe it. Try to get into this industry and put your trust and faith in that.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Well, the other part is AI could and probably will help insurance companies underwrite and get things better.
Without
right?
a doubt.
So
Yes.
you start looking at it, and Bill goes out there, and Bill's taking pictures and looking around, and AI is taking the information, saying, "Listen, if there is a loss, here's what the cost is going to be."
Yeah.
So AI should help us get to a resolution faster, perhaps less expensively. So there are some upsides that all of the companies that you represent, the reason why they're investing is to get better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They some companies have the means to really invest in it, and if they marry that AI with a market they really understand and are good at, that's where they get really competitive.
Right.
And so insurance companies want to stay competitive.
Sure.
And
it's their business.
And if they know that they can stay competitive in market X, Y, and Z, and then if they, go and find the right agents that know how to get into the right market that fit the underwriting, that's that's the perfect storm.
Right.
And that's what I hope to see more of, is insurance companies saying, here's our underwriting, here's what really fits for us. We kind of have this algorithm
This
based
is our
upon
niche.
X, Y, and Z. Sometimes
Yeah.
it could be credit scores. It could be other stuff. They're like, these are the ones you really want because we know we're a good fit. Saves everyone time. You find the customer efficiently, help the customer, and you don't have to go around and knock on doors like, I did 15 years ago and
Right.
get rejected 20 times and maybe get a phone call back for one of them and
Right.
try to make that work, which was a great
Hard.
experience.
Yeah. Hard.
It's a great experience.
Yeah. It is. So tell me a little bit. You just sparked something. So you get this underwriting piece. So if I have a commercial building, what are the things that underwriters look for?
Well, obviously it's the biggest things is year of construction because they know codes have kept up to
So if it's
speed.
built in 1908 or built in 1988, there's a difference.
And the first thing they're going to ask is when did they update the electrical? Obviously something built between 71 and 79 was aluminum wiring, right? That's when a lot of apartment buildings were built, and so you see that flags go up. Did they have aluminum wiring? Did they do the aluminum? So yeah, that stuff is right on the radar. And of course, loss history. Other than that, there's life safety attributes of a building, especially when you're dealing with multifamily. Got a bunch of people in there sleeping in there at night. So all those things are the pretty obvious ones that they'll ask about. That's where I see.
You kind of get like credit, right? So how big it is, obviously, how many people are in there? Is there fire suppression? Is it up to code? What material it's made out of, right? Like if it's stick built, if it's brick, if it's,
Sure.
if it's a flat roof, if it's a, something else, all of that stuff is in there. So you can't just say commercial insurance is this. It really depends on what you own, where you own it, how it's utilized.
Yeah.
When it was built is pretty interesting too, because where we live in the central New York area, there's still buildings with asbestos ceilings and asbestos tile floors.
We drive by them every day.
Right. Think about it. I just hope nobody scratches that thing. Don't, I mean, I think we've done a good job with lead windows and lead paint, but I'm sure there's some of it that's been painted over that's sitting there, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure, the homeowner or whoever owned that property before did a really good job of documenting this.
Oh yeah, everybody knows.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the part. You get those surprises. And if I go into a building that was, like I said, built in the 70s, aluminum wiring and lead paint, and
Big difference.
Was there remediation, et cetera? That's a tough one.
What's the most common claim that you deal with? Common claims.
Aside from the fire and wind, right? Because we had tornadoes this last year. We had tornadoes in upstate New York that were devastating. So, wind, fire, obviously. But the smaller ones a lot of them they're sewer and drain backup. We've
had that here, boy.
It's as simple as something got plugged up or whatever, and then you have sheetrock, you have tile, you have flooring, you have all those things, and those thankfully are usually a smaller claim, but it's a $10,000, $15,000 hit. Do you have the coverage for it? It's not automatically covered. So the smaller stuff, sewer and drain, leaks, is what I see that are an annoyance or really, I got to deal with it.
And you have to deal with it right now.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're not opening the doors.
Right.
You can't let people come in and do their job without water.
Or if it's in a residential place.
Yeah, these people are out.
I need to talk to my guy, Keith, because we've had plumbing backups and we've never submitted a claim, and maybe we should.
Ah, yes. Yeah. Tell Keith to get his checkbook out.
I know. Well, because you sit there, we have two tenants who are there, and if it backs up, like it seems like it has backed up a bunch, you have to deal with it right then. Like they live there. Like they have to be able to flush the toilet and turn on the...
That's going to ruin your next 3 or 4 days, if not the next few weeks, if you don't get out and take it.
And it's just going to get worse. It doesn't get better.
You're not going. Your business is not going to be the same.
Right.
Without that getting fixed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think that's always the interesting thing. So you probably have some folks who have your number on speed dial, which is not necessarily a good thing. And then there's folks that, you're saying, well, you should put a claim in for that because they never do, right? Like we've never put a claim in here and we probably could have. But you also have people putting claims for every little thing that happens. Help me understand, how do you navigate that? Because you don't want to tell somebody don't put a claim in. But you also know, depending on the type of claim, if your loss history gets to a point, the next time your policy comes for renewal or you shop that policy out, they may pay for it now, but you, the client, may pay for it going forward.
Yeah, it's the good, bad, and the ugly conversation. That's how I put it. And say, the good news is you have coverage, and certainly use it as you see fit. Here's what I see coming up in the market that might be available at your renewal, because I can never guarantee that company XYZ is going to offer a renewal, or I
Right.
can never guarantee that company XYZ is not going to increase your rates.
Right.
So, you do the math, and if someone's paying $50,000 a year on their premium and they have a $5,000 loss, you say, this is a small thing. Is it likely to happen again? Let's talk about trying to help, remediate this and see if we can avoid it going in the future. But so that's really the beginning of the conversation, and say, if you're comfortable, we can put in the claim. Great. This is what I see going on in the market. And I cannot guarantee what they're going to do at renewal. And within certain industries, there's still a lot of players out there, and it's still competitive, and their loss history is still favorable.
Right.
And it's something that's really important to them. Not that everything like that's not important, but I said, yeah, let's take care of it. But give them the good, bad, and the ugly, and then say, I don't want to have this conversation at renewal. I want to have this conversation now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, so one of the things I'm just, from my personal experience, is almost every policy has a deductible. There's a good reason for that, right? And if my deductible is $2,500 or $5,000 or $10,000 and I have a claim that's just over it, does it make sense to do it or not? And it's kind of this awkward conversation, right? Because part of you wants to say, listen, if you have a $5,000 deductible and the claim's $6,000, do you want to put in and get the $1,000? And some people will say, well, 100%. Well, why wouldn't I? And then there's the other part of me that says, all right, well, it is a business expense. It's deductible. And if I do that, does that set me up in the future to be somebody that's like, you know what, you haven't had that many claims, Mark, as far as dollar figures, but you've put in 6 times in the last 3 years.
Yeah,
and
your
insurance
frequency's
companies
way
see
up.
that, right?
Yeah. And also too, I mean, it's a matter of, listen, the first thing, if we go elsewhere, and if you go elsewhere with another agent, it doesn't matter. The first thing they're going to look at is your loss history. So there's a piece of paper out there that's going to follow you. And typically insurance carriers look back 5 years. So, it's your choice at that point.
Sure.
So the frequency of the claims, if they keep on having a water damage claim every other year for $5,000, $10,000, insurance companies might pick you up, but they'll say, we're not offering that coverage.
Right.
So,
which is unique in the P&C world, right? Because they have the ability to carve out certain things.
Yeah.
Right. If you say, hey, listen, in the last 5 years, you've had 5 claims on your roof, we're not going to cover your roof, or we're going to cover your roof for damage other than this, right?
Yeah.
Like if there's a tornado, we cover your roof.
Yeah.
But if it leaks, because it's always been leaking, we're not covering it.
Yeah. And if you find yourself in a tight market, insurance companies are really going to clamp down on that and say, we're going to flex our muscle on this and say, we'll offer you a policy. The terms might not be the best, but kind of all we can offer. And this is what
take it or leave it.
This is the business that we understand what's going on, and sorry, this is it. Take it or leave it.
Right.
And you don't want to put somebody in that position, but unfortunately, when there's less players in it, that's what you get.
Yeah. And I do some work with some big businesses in New York and outside of New York. And it's definitely getting tight now, where businesses are becoming more difficult to find coverage.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, well, you can always find coverage. That's not necessarily the case, right? Like I work with some large dairy farms, and depending on where they live and what their claim history has been, even if it had nothing to do with them, right? Tornado, hailstorm, whatever. If that's too high and people see that, like it's hard for us to go out and find carriers that will cover it. Even if the lender says you have to have it, right? Like just is what it is.
Yeah. Just on the same vein of that, and what I encourage, I'm going off in a different direction, but it's
okay.
important to this, is when I work with a lot of these people that invest in properties and pick up properties and stuff like that, is please talk to me before you sign on the dotted line. and let's make sure we get the underwriting down on some of these things, because you might find yourself in a corner. You need flood insurance. Guess what? Flood insurance is tough.
Right.
And,
or it's tens of thousands of dollars. So
yeah.
your cost to carry just went up way more
So,
than
so
you
do you
think.
really want to, do the numbers still work?
Right.
And more often than not, that's the one when someone comes to me afterward, we're all excited, I got a great deal on this property.
Yeah. There's a reason.
There's a reason. I said,
Yeah.
well, there's aluminum wiring, blah, 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 or flood zone, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, please come to me beforehand. Let's talk about it. And certainly going to be worth your while to know going in when you sign the paperwork whether or not you can
Yeah.
actually make money on this deal.
Well, sometimes I got a great deal isn't such a great deal.
Mm.
Yeah.
Such is life.
I guess. I think so. You know, things can always be worse. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Well, what else? Tell me, what else?
what else is new? Really? Have we beaten the insurance stuff to
Well,
death?
you know, it's interesting. This is probably by the time this hits, it'll be maybe episode 8 or 9 or 10.
Okay.
Right? Somewhere around there. So maybe 7, something like that. So the more we do it, the easier it becomes and the faster the time goes by.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this isn't the last time that we'll sit and talk. But, you know, just having the opportunity to engage with someone like you to talk about an industry that people just don't understand. They don't really want to spend time with it. Gives us the ability to have little short snippets that you and I can use to educate folks and realize that, you know, there is such a thing as a professional insurance agent. And the reason why they're there is because they know more than we do.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're skeptical because we just think, well, insurance companies are just out to make money. Well, businesses have to be profitable to survive. There's no doubt about it. But they also have to make good business decisions, and finding somebody that can be a partner with you in the necessary evil, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. It's like, you know, the good news is I can get you insurance. The bad news is you have to buy it from an insurance company. And the ugly is it costs you money, right? That's just the reality of it.
Yep.
But if the tornado comes or something burns down or somebody falls down the stairs, at least you've got some coverage and your life's not totally changed, right?
Yeah. You want to get back up on your feet as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And you want to go to bed at night knowing that if that does happen, you know, you've got things in order to get you back there.
Yeah.
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 And you know, we always try to come up with a tagline for what we do. And like, I'm in the protection business, right? Or I'm in the peace of mind business.
Yeah.
And you know, that is true, but that's what it's about. And I don't like using that tagline because it sounds a little hokey, but it's true.
But it is true, because somebody comes up to you at a party, in an elevator, you know, somewhere, and says, Bill, well, what do you do? Right? You have to come up, and you don't have the ability to say, well, I'm going to talk to you for the next 15 minutes about what I do.
Yeah.
You've got like 2 or 3 sentences.
Yeah.
And the reality is I'm a professional insurance agent that focuses on commercial property liability and cohabitational buildings. At least it kind of gets it out there.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they'll say either, oh, that's great, and then they talk about something else, or, oh, that's interesting, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
But you want to be able to have that speech so that people know. And even if you call on somebody or you get referred to somebody, you need to be able to express that to them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a plumber, right? Somebody says, what do you do? I'm a plumber. Everybody's like, all right, I know what a plumber is.
I got that visual.
Check. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
If somebody says like me, it's like, Mark, you're a financial planner. I actually did a blog on this. As a difference between an advisor, a consultant, and a planner. And the SEC and all those folks have different definitions on what that means. But I really believe a financial consultant, a financial advisor, and a financial planner are different. They do different things. When somebody says you're an insurance agent, everybody just assumes you sell auto insurance. And it's just
funny.
So,
you're right.
It's just so much more than that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, somebody can call Bill tomorrow and say, can you insure my car? And you would do it, and you'll do a good job, and you've got options and all that other stuff. But that's just not what your focus is. That's not like Monday morning, I got to go out and find cars to insure. It's just not who it is.
Yeah, no, it's not that fun.
Well, talk about a competitive business, right? Talk about dollars driving the policy. That's what it really is.
Yeah, well, it's the most dangerous thing you do every day is get in your car.
Which is amazing to think of.
Right? Yeah. And then, you know, it's always been, it's funny, you know, things change when you have kids.
Yep.
And, when you get your kids and you put your kids in a car, not that I wasn't aware of the risk that I take every day. And I'm like, oh, kids around.
Yeah.
Like the dad thing, like you drive safe, say it all the time. And you do what you can, but at the same time, at the end of the day, what kind of insurance is that? Because something happened, obviously you don't want the fire department to get there and do their thing and make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scary.
It is. I mean, you think of that. I think the other thing that people think about is health insurance. You don't think about it. Like I know I have it through my wife, and I know if something happens, it's there, but I try to avoid doctors at all costs, right? I try to avoid calling
Plan A.
Plan A. Don't get sick or hurt. When it comes to insurance, like that I have with Tanner, I hope that I never wreck my car, my house never catches on fire, nobody slips and falls here, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But at some point, my kids get into a fender bender, right? That just happens, and eventually somebody is playing and they hurt themselves and they got to go to the doctor. It's just part of life.
Yep.
It just is what it is.
Yeah. And we're here to pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
You're here and also too, this is one of the little elevator pitches I've used sparingly is, I'm here to make a bad situation good, better. Yeah.
Less worse.
And that's the claims, the head that I had for 15 years, the hat I wore for 15 years was claims. It's like, you're expected to take a bad situation and make it better. So you can imagine the mindset of the person coming to you is hair on fire or, oh my God.
What a visual.
Yeah. Hair on fire or they're frustrated and confused because they hear all these bad things about insurance companies. So they come into you and they're like, this is what's going to happen. And they're not going to, and you're going to, and so that's where if you really spend the time trying to educate them and not educate, but making sure that they understand what to expect.
It's about communication, right? Communicate to them.
Yeah. And
that's the challenge. Like we were going back to AI, the algorithm, all that type of stuff can really help us. But if your son or daughter crashes their car or your commercial building has a massive plumbing loss, you can send an email to a claims place, but it doesn't feel as good as calling Bill and being like, Bill, this happened. Can you help me?
Yeah.
And then you and your team help saying, do this, we'll follow up on it. Right. Like that's the value of it. And making sure that you can say, listen, we have coverage for this. That's what we did. That's what we did.
Yeah.
And they can fight for you if you don't get what you think you should have gotten, right? Like you're there to fight for them.
Well, I laugh only because my claims background really has helped me a lot. And it's not necessarily that the insurance companies are withholding coverage.
Yeah.
It's just that they don't know how to go from A to D. They don't know and so I did claims for years. And so that's one thing that I have that maybe not a lot of other agents do have is that experience of, I know these claims folks. I don't know them personally, but I know what they have to go through.
Right.
So if something happens and something is dragging or nothing's getting resolved, I know how it works.
Yeah.
And not to say that in a kind of coy kind of way, but you know what I mean? It's like,
it's kind of like, how to play the game seems like a negative thing. It's not negative. Some of the stuff's cut and dry. It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have somebody stop out. You're going to take pictures. You're going to get estimates. You're going to submit that stuff. And there's a process. And the vast majority of the insurance companies are excellent at doing that, right? You wouldn't recommend someone who wasn't excellent at doing it. But from time to time, it's pretty cool to know that you've got a bill, or someone else from the company. Don't press mute on that, Bill.
And that's the eject button right there. If I did it one more time. Yeah. Yep. Claims is great experience. Definitely helps me in this career. But if you're in claims, please do yourself a favor and get into the agency side.
Nobody at the home office from any of your carriers would hate that conversation more.
Yeah. So,
well, cool, man. Well, thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
This was great.
Wasn't too bad, right?
No.
And we covered some cool stuff, and next time we'll cover more stuff.
Yeah, I thought you were going to start asking me about my favorite colors and stuff like that.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's the hardest part. Everybody's like, I've got nothing to say. I'm like, let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see. No, but I appreciate it. I appreciate our friendship over the years, and I appreciate what you and Tanner has done. You guys have always done great for me and for my family and for our businesses.
Thank you.
And I know lots of folks who are property and casualty insurance agents, and the vast majority of those people I know are good people. And part of this is to let people peel back the onion and see that there are people out there in this industry that really care about what they do.
Yeah.
So, and I appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
All right. Great.